Security control frameworks is what we are going to learn about today. In this course, you will have an introduction to security frameworks, regulations, and risk, additional countermeasures. Then we will compare various existing security control frameworks. And lastly, we will take a look at the code security set. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Vinay Kumar. I'm a cybersecurity consultant and I have been in this field for more than a decade. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about security control frameworks. The security control frameworks is a comprehensive catalog of controls that are designed to enable companies to design, build, and maintain secure processes, systems, and applications. There are about 250 different security frameworks used globally, developed to suit a wide variety of businesses and sectors. Keep watching my course. We will dig into the top four security frameworks, what's included within them, and how they map to one another. Additionally, I will review how to apply best practices to your organization. Security frameworks can improve any company's security posture. Join me on this exciting adventure through security frameworks and best practices. Security permeates everything businesses do. Both physical and digital assets have to be protected as well as information. Security frameworks are consistent tools that every industry can use to improve their security practices. So in short, everyone should use security frameworks. Each industry chooses frameworks for various reasons. It could be for compliance with the regulation in a specific industry. For some, it is about national welfare or public safety. Some businesses leverage security as a product differentiator, showing that they protect their customers' data from the onset. Finally, some organizations need framework to ensure they are protecting sensitive data, whether it be their intellectual property or client data. Whatever the reason, security frameworks provide standardization and guidance for how to protect your organization with recommendations for how to educate your people, how to document and apply your organizational processes, and implementing and maintaining your technology. Every organization can benefit from the consistent language and standard approach that security frameworks bring. Modern life involves using the internet all the time. If you think about it, there are 7 billion people in the world and 3.8 billion of them are internet users. That's over half. Data flows every day between people and companies. Whether you are doing businesses, perhaps you are going to the doctor, or maybe you are doing a bit of personal shopping on your own time. Data is in every part of our lives. It is vital that companies from the very largest to the very smallest have the security frameworks in place to protect the data they are using and or collecting. Interestingly, in 2017, 20% of companies reported they were not utilizing a security framework. So how do they determine where their security risks are? Frameworks guide the implementation and management of security controls within an organization. They provide standards outlining best practices. You make a daily essential list to the store you do, right? Similarly, security frameworks provide a checklist so that you don't forget anything. Frameworks provide a reference, common language, and vernacular. They use common measurements and they use best practices and benchmarking of other industry peers. There are a variety of reasons why organizations choose to implement security frameworks. Oftentimes, the reason they choose to move towards a framework will derive the benefits they derive from using that particular one. Some of the top drivers include legal compliance, national safety, public safety. Many companies think about reputation and financial security in case of a security breach. And some companies think about how security can be a differentiator for them by providing confidence to their consumers that their data is secure. The main benefits to any organization that leverage security frameworks include things like a solid baseline for measuring security effectiveness. This allows you to report consistently to your leadership what your baseline was and the improvements you are making. There's compliance, making sure that you can show your auditors that you are doing the things required by the law. The Last benefit is improved demonstrable maturity. Just as there are benefits with a security program, no program comes without its challenges. Some of the top challenges include lack of budget, the inability to buy the tools or resources needed to work through your program. Another is trained staff. Having the right capabilities on your security team is important. Many organizations are looking for automated tools so that they can stop doing manual processes that are not scalable for their organization. And finally, many organizations seek a lack of integration between tools so that they seems to be one of that needs to be administered separately. As we look at the top benefits and challenges, the benefits outweigh the challenges where security is concerned. It's likely eating an elephant. You do it one bite at a time. These frameworks will raise the bar of your security program inch by inch. There are some key terms to be aware of when you are discussing security frameworks. Security frameworks are a set of practices, policies, and processes that hold your organization accountable for its defenses. It is a calculated approach to determining risk, setting strategies, and obtaining resources. Further, a security framework is measurable and repeatable. NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, is a physical sciences laboratory spanning science, technology, engineering, and information technology. Their mission is to supply references materials to end users, which can be used as calibration standards and quality controls. ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. It is an internationally recognized organization that creates standards for over 168 member countries. It is an independent organization and it is the world's largest developer of international standards used among nations. PCI, or the Payment Card Industry, is an information security standard for organizations that accept payment cards. This standard is mandated by the major credit card brands to help reduce credit card frauds. SIG, or Standard Information Gathering, is a tool to help companies assess risk in a standard fashion. It is created by the Shared Assessment Program and has been developing third-party risk management tools since 2005 in the form of a questionnaire. The security world is full of jargon. Recognizing the main security frameworks can help your organization determine the best controls to use for your program. In a 2017 survey of over 300 security decision makers, there were four clear leaders in terms of the most highly adopted security frameworks: PCI, ISO 27001, the CIS Critical Security Controls, and the NIST 853 framework. Some frameworks are more comprehensive, others are industry specific. PCI is an industry specific framework required for anyone accepting payment cards. You got it right, all the payment cards in your wallet. It is covered by this framework. ISO 27001, on the other hand, is a globally recognized organization with a comprehensive framework that covers all of the security controls. The CIS critical security controls are more of a high level discussion. It covers the same security controls by grouping them into 20 critical factors to consider. Finally, there's the NIST 853 framework, a comprehensive set of controls. As you can see, US federal agencies are required to follow this framework, and any companies that do businesses with them are encouraged to do so. Determining the best framework to adopt relies on many factors. Choosing the right one means selecting the framework that fits your organization's unique security needs. As you consider, think about your organization's internal business objectives. Perhaps it's a compliance requirement to a certain regulation, or if you have done a risk analysis, maybe it's around the results of that. Determine if you require more policy-based controls or more technical controls for your organization. Finally, looking at industry best practices and how to apply them can work for you as well. Each framework has pros and cons. They vary in their objectives and approaches, but rely on the same foundational principles. Organizations vary in size, complexity, and maturity. Choosing the right framework that matches your requirements is paramount to achieving a security posture your organization can support and thrive under. A hybrid framework is okay too. It's add flexibility. Combining best practice for multiple frameworks can help meet specific functional requirements. Don't forget to think about stakeholders and other departments as well. Determining the needs of your organization is a precursor to aligning to one or several frameworks. There are other security frameworks that are used frequently, most of which are specific to an industry or a specific need. COBIT, or the Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies, is a framework created by the International Professional Association called ISACA. It's used primarily for information technology management and IT governance. ISACA is a membership organization and there is a user training and development on how to use the framework available to its members. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. HIPAA is both regulation and a framework. The regulation outlines the specific controls that need to be in place for an organization dealing with electronic personal health information or EPHI. HIPAA is used primarily in the United States and works to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that EPHI. GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. GDPR covers the data privacy of all the EU citizens. Therefore, any business transactions covering an EU citizen falls under this regulation. While more of regulation than a framework, it does outline 99 directives that are process and technology-based controls required for a security program that falls under this law. The Australian Signals Directorate is a set of controls intended to protect your most important assets. There are multiple security controls in this directorate, while the ASD focuses on its top four. The Australian government provides this information free of charge for anyone, but targets an audience of their government, businesses, and individuals. Each company should investigate their own local and industry specific regulatory requirements to ensure they comply as needed. One of the primary driving factors for security in many organizations is the need for regulatory compliance. Many laws and regulations require certain security behaviors from businesses handling certain information and assets. Many regulations are US based, but there are international laws that require compliance with security practices. For example, in Canada, there is the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, which discusses data handling. In Mexico, there is a law on the protection of personal data held by private parties which discusses consent. In the EU, there is GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which aims to protect individual privacy. And in India, there is legalization being created in the light of the Indian Space Agency hack that occurred in 2015. No matter where a company is located, if they do business within or with these countries, they may be required to execute certain security practices. In the United States, several high-profile acts regulate security practices. HIPAA, or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, protects the electronic data and privacy of healthcare patients. Sarbanes-Oxley, or SOX, requires internal security controls for financial reporting systems. FISMA, or the Federal Information Security Management Act of 2002, recognizes security as a matter of national security. While specific to federal agencies, any business doing business with the federal government should follow these guidelines as well. The Graham-Leach-Billy Act requires financial institutions to secure the private information of their clients and their customers. FERPA, or the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, demand that student educational records be protected. And PCI DSS, or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, is designed to protect customer credit card information and to reduce fraud. As you can see, numerous regulations touch specific components of US businesses. Many industries across the globe require security processes to be in place, or those organizations could be held liable. Risk assessment is a systematic process of evaluating the potential risks that may be involved in a projected activity or undertaking. That can mean many things for an organization. Using a standard risk assessment tools helps a team measure components in a consistent way across many different subject areas. The Standardized Information Gathering or SIG is a risk assessment tool that companies can use to reveal the different exposures for their organization and where they fall on the maturity scales. The SIG began as an effort of the four largest consulting firms to standardize assessments of customer environments. There is a cost to be a member of the shared assessment program, but it is not the only tool available. There are many options available for free as well. The Center for Internet Security has free assessment tools, as does the NIST website. You can reveal your organization's needs and budget to make the best decision for your company. This macro-enabled worksheet covers multiple risk domains, including cybersecurity, IT, privacy, data security, and business resiliency, to name a few. You can see this isn't just an IT tool or an information security tool. It can be used to assess and uncover risk areas across the entire business. Examples include missing policies for acceptable use of social media, customer privacy, or onboarding a new employees. These risk domains map to the same domain that the frameworks cover. This is the main benefit of leveraging a security framework. Common, consistent language. Risk assessment is a critical component of understanding an organization's security exposures. The SIG is an industry tool that can help practitioners through that assessment. PCI DSS, or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, is an information security standard for any organization that transacts credit cards. It includes transmission and storage of credit card information. It is mandated by credit card companies and is overseen by the PCI Security Standards Council. There are 12 requirements for compliance as part of this standard. The PCI standard was created to reduce credit card frauds. Each of the major credit card companies had different programs in use, but the intent was the same: to ensure their merchants were following security practices when they store, process, and transmit cardholder data. The PCI Security Standards Council was formed, and the first version was published in December 2004. There are 12 requirements for compliance organized into six logical groups called control objectives. The first is to create a secure network and systems. Next, it discusses protecting cardholder data. Third, PCI requires an organization to have a vulnerability management program. Number four is to ensure controlled access to your systems. Next, companies are required to ensure the network is monitored and tested. And finally, each organization needs a security policy that is propagated to all of its employees. Organizations must validate their compliance each year, either through an external assessor or an internal assessor. Companies with very small volumes are permitted to do a self-attestation. Compliance is not required by US federal law, but some US states have made equivalent provisions similar to PCI. CIS stands for the Center for Internet Security. CIS uses a prioritized set of actions to protect organizations from known threat vectors. These actions are known as critical security controls. There are 20 of them. The critical security controls began in 2008 when the Office of the US Secretary of Defense asked the NSA to help prioritize the multitude of available cybersecurity controls. The consortium of public and private industry experts worked to prioritize the controls, including representatives from the CIS and the SENS Institute. The critical security controls are reviewed with member every 6 to 12 months to ensure it stays current and has gone through multiple iterations. Originally, the 20 critical security controls were weighted as high, medium, and low security mitigations. Today's version of the critical security controls has shifted to a breakdown consisting of basic controls, foundational controls, and organizational controls. The basic CIS controls consist of high impact information and security practices every organization should have in place. It includes such things as having an inventory of both your hardware and your software, of having vulnerability management, secure configuration, and ensuring that you are controlling your privileged user access. The foundational CIS controls consist of good security practices that organizations should strive to achieve. It includes items like protecting email and web browsers, malware protection, network controls, data recovery, data protection, and access control in general. The organizational controls consist of controls that should support the configurations and security practices you have put in place under the other controls. It includes such things as awareness trainings and incident response plan, penetration testing, and application security. The Center for Internet Security also offers a tool called the CIS RAM. RAM stands for Risk Assessment Method, and it is a tool that helps implement and assess your security posture using the CIS critical security controls. The Center for Internet Security offers this tool free of charge. The CIS critical security controls are not based on certification or compliance focused. It's simply used to help companies improve their security posture. The NIST Special Publication 853 provides a catalog of security controls for all US federal information systems except those related to national security. It covers the risk management framework, which addresses risks from worst case impact analysis. NIST or the National Institute of Standards and Technology created this special publication to assist federal agencies in implementing the Federal Information Security Management Act of 2002, or FISMA, and to help create cost-effective standardization. While all federal agencies must use it, organizations wanting to do business with the federal government should use this framework to show similar security vigilance. It is available to any organization that seeks to use it. The structure of NIST 853 aligns with the management, operational, and technical safeguards prescribed to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or CIA, of systems, information, and data. There are 17 control families under the NIST framework. Management security is the overall design of your controls. They guide implementing your security controls. Examples of this include things such as doing assessments and having a process to acquire new systems or services. Operational security is the effectiveness of your controls. It includes things such as implementation and the security architecture after the initial building of a system is complete. These controls include guidance around how to configure your system, how to maintain it, and ensure its ongoing integrity, as well as training your employees. Technical security is the protection of systems at the hardware, software, or firmware levels from threats that could impact the CIA of the systems or data. These controls surround your system protection such as access control, authentication, and systems and communication protections. In addition to the NIST 853 framework, NIST offers a special publication 830, which is a guide for conducting risk assessments. It is a comprehensive overview of terminology, risk factors, and wanting that you can use to educate your organization on risk exposures. It is available free of charge to anyone that cares for to use it. ISO 27001 is an information security standard that positions information security under management control and outlines specific requirements. It specifically aims to put an information security management system, or ISMS, in place to ensure comprehensive coverage of all assets and data. That means not just IT, things such as paperwork and proprietary knowledge. This standard is published jointly by ISO, or the International Organization for Standardization, and the IEC, or International Electrotechnical Commission. It was originally published by the BSI Group in 1995 under the name BS 7799. It was written by the UK government's Department of Trade and Industry. It was revised several times and incorporated under the 27000 series in November 2005. The most recently published version is from 2013. ISO 27001 does not formally mandate specific controls. It allows for flexibility. Organizations can choose which ones are applicable controls by doing a comprehensive assessment of its risk. Further, companies are not required to mitigate all risk. All that is required is to do the analysis and choose an appropriate risk strategy. Avoid, transfer, accept, or mitigate the risk. There are 10 sections in this standard. The first three outlines generic requirements, references, and definitions. Section 4 discusses interested parties or stakeholders. Section 5 outlines that top management must commit to the ISMS. Section 6 defines the process to identify, analyze, and plan to treat those risks. And Section 7 informs us that an organization must have competency training and documentation in place. 8 details assessing and treating risk and managing change. Section 9 discusses how to monitor and measure or audit your controls. And Section 10 outlines how to address the findings of your reviews to continually improve the ISMS. Annex 8 is a list of controls and their objectives. There are 114 controls in 14 clauses and 35 control categories. An ISMS can be certified as compliant by an accredited registrar. There are three stages to the certification process. Stage 1 is a primary informal review of an ISMS with an auditor. Stage 2 is the formal comprehensive compliance audit, and then three are ongoing audits to confirm an organization remains compliant with the standard by doing reassessment audits. While an organization can be certified as ISO 27001 compliant, it is not required to be able to use this framework. ISO 27001 can be used by anyone whether you are seeking certification or not. The top four security frameworks each cover multiple security controls. Although there are some differences, many of these controls overlap. Coming in at nearly 1000 pages of documentation, it's hard to determine the best framework to adopt. Comparing these frameworks is a great place to start. PCI has 12 top-level requirements with approximately 5 to 20 controls under each of those requirements. All of the controls surround the protection of credit card data. PCI compliance via an audit is required annually. The CIS critical security controls have 20 high-level controls with many specific requirements under each of those areas built around basic foundational or organizational controls. All of these critical security controls are built around industry best practices. There's no compliance or certification with the critical security controls. NIST 853 has 17 control families with 325 specific control requirements under their moderate level of protection. This comprehensive control set is required to be followed by federal agencies. Anyone can use the NIST controls for best practices. There is a certificate called FedRAM that can be used by organizations that want to do business with the federal government. It is a pre-approval to work with them and it must be done annually. The last framework, ISO 27001, has 10 sections focused on management commitment and involvement in risk management. There are 114 comprehensive controls for an organization to consider and analyze in terms of their risk exposure. There is a free there is a fee to access the controls, and there is a certification of compliance available for a charge by an accredited registrar. It's important to understand the top four frameworks. They all cover similar foundational security controls, but in different ways. Consider the method of control when selecting a framework for your organization. It's important to understand the overlap of the controls across frameworks. In this example, I will discuss incident response. Under PCI, incident response is found under requirement 11 and 12. It calls for an organization to have a documented incident response plan and escalation procedures, as well as roles and responsibilities and other preparation information. Additionally, it requires an organization to do incident response testing annually and to evolve the plan from lessons learned and industry best practice. In the critical security controls, incident response is CSC number 19. It details in 8 different components that you should have an incident response procedure, assigned duties, incident reporting, and routine practice and walkthroughs. Under NIST 853, the incident response has its own control family. It details out 10 controls to have a policy, to do training and testing, to have a documented plan covering the 4 phases of security incidents, to have a reporting mechanism, to have an identified team and prepared response or notification to work from. With ISO 27001, incident response is listed under section 16.1, Information Security Management. This section outlines that there should be responsibilities and procedures to manage, report, and assess information security events and weaknesses consistently and effectively, and to collect forensic evidence in addition to learning from incidents and making improvements. As you can see, all 4 frameworks include the incident response in their controls. Understanding how each framework addresses incident response will help determine the best application for your organization. The framework control overlap in the technical world as well. In this example, I will explore antivirus and the anti-malware. Under PCI, antivirus and anti-malware controls are found on requirement 5. It calls for an organization to deploy antivirus software on all systems commonly affected by malicious software, especially workstations and those systems facing the internet. Additionally, the antivirus program used must be kept current and actively running. In the critical security controls, AV and anti-malware are discussed in CSE number 8. It details out in 8 controls that an organization must have centrally managed anti-malware software, keep it current, configure scanning, logging, and ensure that they have disabled auto-run content. Under NIST 853, antivirus and anti-malware controls are found under the System and Information Integrity or SI family. SI2 discusses flaw remediation, which requires up-to-date antivirus signatures. SI3 reveals malicious code protection, requiring protections at entry and exit points to detect and eradicate malicious code, to maintain and update the program consistently, and to scan, block, and or quarantine suspicious code. With ISO 27001, anti-malware is discussed in 12.2 under Operation Security. It calls for protection under protection from malware and also outlines user awareness. Each control framework includes the foundational controls needed to mature your information security program and secure your business. The top 4 security frameworks each cover many of the same security controls. Beginning to understand the different approaches each framework takes will help an organization select the most appropriate controls for their very specific business needs. Don't forget to consider other functions in your organization that may be impacted by implementing the controls. There are controls from for background checks and acceptable use policies that HR will need to review. There are application-based controls for security or software development to run by product teams, and there are contingency plans, planning components for disaster recovery that will need input from facilities. Take a look beyond the control summary to the specific control language to identify who your stakeholders will be. As you decide which controls to use, some templates help map the different frameworks to one another. There is one available from NIST called document 3764. It maps the NIST cybersecurity framework or CSF to the critical security controls. ISO 27001, NIST 853, even COBIT and ISA. Additionally, the SIG offers a mapping of its security assessment domains to the ISO 27001 controls and the 27002 guidance for those same controls. Once an organization has chosen a framework to guide its security posture and risk assessment, it goes without saying that it makes sense to build out that knowledge and capability within the information security team to help guide the organization. Each of the frameworks is direct in its approach, although the intent of each is a bit different. Find one that aligns with your business needs and gather knowledge as you begin to build out a core security set, measures, and assurances. Security frameworks share many foundational security components. You don't necessarily have to choose one framework over another, although there will be some differences in their controls. Therefore, you need to outline your own process by determining your core security set. Much like ISO 27001, your core security set is where you can approach your controls like a menu, deciding which control families you are going to adopt within your organization. First, you can choose high, medium, or low controls. Then you can decide who will be the owners or stakeholders of those controls. Next, you can choose to add many or just a few controls under a given family. Finally, you can choose to incorporate additional guidance under specific controls. That is, unless your organization is seeking certifications such as ISO, PCI, or FedRAMP, in which case you will need to consider the specific requirements for each of those. Security controls are safeguard or control measures to avoid, detect, counteract, or minimize security risk. Common controls are security controls that can support multiple information systems efficiently and effectively as a common capability. I highly recommend you choose those as your first priority. Then you should review the results of your risk assessment. Identifying the control families needed to cover your highest risk exposures. Finally, gather feedback from stakeholders. What do they think is important is to your security posture as a business? This is an opportunity to create relationships with these peoples and discuss why security is important and how they think it should be approached. Identify allies and help influence those that are unsure. Remember, you don't have to comprehensively do all the controls in a given control family at first. That will come with time. But identify your exposures and make sure to include those in your core security set. A measure is a plan of or course of action taken to achieve a particular purpose. A security measure, especially, is a precaution taken against threats such as theft, espionage, or sabotage. Once you have decided which control families to include in your core security set, you have to outline how to measure success. These measures can come from the frameworks you have chosen to leverage, looking at their controls and how they recommend measuring them. Let me walk through an example. If I look at personal security as a control family, I need to determine how I will measure effective procedures for the personal life cycle from hire through to separation. There are countless measures you could implement. You could require that all new hires complete a background check before beginning work and document the process to ensure that all access is removed at the end of that individual's employment. You might outline a process for employees who transfer departments, including management approvals and access reviews. Finally, you might have a policy around personal sanctions when a policy is violated. Knowing what actions an organization will take helps to prepare for those type of situations. It's critical to make sure you have a way to measure success. If you did a background check, is the goal to have 100% employees that will complete them? If you remove access at separation, is it within one business day or within 24 hours? Knowing the answers to these questions will help you to do a successful measurement. Ensuring you have a way to measure the effectiveness of your controls will help you to be able to report on the security improvements you are making. Now that you have decided on your core security set and how to measure it, it is time to prove that you have done what you said you would do. Assurance is a positive declaration intended to give confidence. Evidence is anything presented in support of an assertion. It is the available body of facts indicating whether a proposition is valid. If I'm implementing configuration management, I would need to determine how to prove I have executed on the measures I outlined for the controls. Evidence is a great way to provide assurance. If you have to measure for baseline configurations, the evidence could be a documented baseline that aligns with the CIS benchmarks. Or if you have a measure for configuration change control, the evidence might be documented change tickets that show an approval process and segregation of duties. Finally, if you have a measure for periodic review of lease functionality, the proof might be a service desk ticket showing a summary of a review meeting and any findings as well as their mitigations. Providing evidence for each measures demonstrates reliability to stakeholders, leadership, and for some organizations. The auditor during an assessment or audit, the ability to show a delineated story from core security control to measure to assurance provides confidence a security organization is running in a standard, measurable, and repeatable fashion. Providing evidence for each measure demonstrate reliability to stakeholders, leadership, and for some organizations, the auditor during an assessment or audit, the ability to show a delineated story from core security set controls onto the measure to assurance provide confidence that a security organization is running in a standard, measurable, and repeatable fashion. Well done, onboard and upward. Although there are a lot of commonalities to map across frameworks, there are still a lot of controls. Tracking and measuring those controls can be difficult through a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheets don't have out-of-the-box reports to share with business leaders. This is where governance, risk, and compliance tools or GRC tools can help ease some of the burdens. GRC solutions are intended to manage IT and security risks while reducing the complexity that often comes with compliance. Being able to correlate the information with the context of organizational business processes can improve meaningful reporting. There is a multitude of GRC vendors. They span the spectrum from lightweight basic tools to mid-range foundational tools to high-end comprehensive tools. Selecting the right vendor depends on the capabilities you have within your IT and security departments, as well as your organization's ability to map your processes to the controls. Let's talk about some items to consider. Will the tool support the way I do business? How easy is implementation? Such as, is it out of the box ready or is it highly configurable and will require professional services? How easy is it to maintain, and how hard to change workflows as my business processes evolve? Does the vendor's customer service receive consistently high scores? How does the vendor manage upgrades and releases? Do they stay current, and do they have secure code development practices? In that vein, does the vendor stay up to date with changes to the most popular frameworks? This should be a non-negotiable component for any tool that claims to be a GRC tool. Is my own staff capable of learning and administrating the tool, or does it require specialized knowledge? I always say people, process, and technology. In that order, however, in the case of a GRC tool, this technology can actually assist you in making your people and processes better. Happy hunting. Being security minded is not a one and done type project. It is an ongoing journey that requires a security mindset to be successful, but it doesn't have to be hard. As they say, how do they eat an elephant? One bite at a time. First, pick a family to focus on. I recommend you start with your organization's largest exposure or risk area. Or if that feels overly complex, choose something simple or low hanging fruit so that you can show a few quick wins and demonstrate that security can be approachable. Remember, your intent is not to have perfect security, but to raise the bar high enough to make you undesirable to bad actors, which means making it too hard for an attack to be worth it. Next, define three measures and do them. Maybe not quite this randomly, but random is better than not working a move. Each control family will have many recommendations under them to choose from. Find Three, that you can begin to build capability and reliability with. For example, if you choose incident response, you can create a lightweight plan to respond to security events. You can create a mechanism such as an email distribution list to report, and then to do a quick lunch and learn training for your employees. People love to gather, especially if you include pizza. Then measure the impact and gather feedback. See how you can iterate on your incidents management, incidents response plan, or measure how many events month over month you are receiving. Perhaps you can add a template to give users a format to respond to, outline the information they need to provide. Last step, repeat. Pick three more and start again. Rinse, repeat. And after a few cycles, you will be on your way to a mature security posture. Thanks for watching my course on security frameworks and best practices. If you would like to learn more, I urge you to dive in. There are many other security and privacy courses that I'm currently designing and developing to help you on your road to a mature security posture. And all those will be published on this YouTube channel, Cybersecurity. So do not miss to subscribe, and to encourage us more, please like and share this course video. If your organization does not use a security framework, consider adopting one. Talk to your peers as well as your stakeholders about the security policies you have in place and what new policies you would like to see. If your organization is already aligned with a security framework, try to learn more about it. If your organization uses the SIG, ask if you can read it. Review your core security set, measures, and assurances. Security is a constant effort. It's not just a project, it's a journey. Always remember, security starts from you. Use the tools at your disposal to navigate the long and windy road to security mindedness. Thank you for watching. If you have got any questions or concern, then the fastest way to reach us is the comment box. Alternatively, you can drop us an email at cybercyber@gmail.com. To keep yourself updated with new topics, trends, and documents, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. You can use our unique ID CyberCyber to find us on these social media platforms. Please subscribe to our channel, press the notification bell icon, like the video, and let's cybit the cyberspace in a whole new way and build this learning loving community together. Thank you so much for watching. Happy learning.